how to hook up a PTT or push-to-talk switch to a Westmount radio RigBlaster Blue. Out of the factory, these devices do allow you to connect a Bluetooth headset, such as this Blue Parrot that I'm talking to you guys on now. However, it only operates in VOX mode, which is voice-operated transmitting. So in this video, I'm going to show you how to wire up the PTT switch. Or, if you want to, you can operate in the traditional VOX mode as well, using the same switch on the front panel you would normally. And we're back to PTT mode. PTT on. And also, just for legality purposes, we are transmitting into a dummy load, so even though it is transmitting between the radios in the room here, I'm not actually transmitting into an antenna.
So to save some time in the video, I've already gone ahead and undone all the connections on the front and the back and the screws holding the panel in. So we'll go ahead and pull this out and take a closer look at the layout of the circuit board. If you guys are like me and have dealt with the RigBlasters for decades, you're all probably very familiar with the section here for the jumpers, which if you recognize those white jumpers and the blue ones down there also, that's how these have been configured for different microphones for as long as I can remember. What Westmount Radio has done with these newer ones is they've come up with these, they call them ISCs. This one's for the round Kenwood metal 8-pin connector. So instead of using jumpers, what you would do with these is plug them in. Actually, make sure that's oriented right. It says that's the front. So you'd plug these in over top of all those pins, and this would automatically configure the RigBlaster for the type of microphone that you have with the radio that you're using. But that didn't always exist. It was these jumpers in years past. But this is the way that you have to do the PTT modification on this also. You can't use the ISCs because it doesn't allow you to add this additional wire. So while we're talking about this, the RCA jack, here is the PTT in and out. And that orange relay is what does the switching if you're running VOX off of the headset. And the signal and ground for the PTT is the same through the relay, and if you wire up the input and output connectors, that all ties together for the PTT function. So again, with the object of what I'm trying to accomplish with using PTT with Bluetooth, the trick is how do you get the audio out of the Bluetooth circuit by itself while leaving the VOX circuit by itself. So if we flip this over, this is my Bluetooth audio wire that I've added. Let me get something to point with here. And here's our 8 pins of the relay, and pin 1 is marked with the square. So as we're looking at this, that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So pin number 5 is what we want to connect to for that Bluetooth audio. So this way you can extract that away from the VOX circuit. And then again, since that is the signal line for the audio, in this case I've got it pinned as a 8-pin round Kenwood style. So pin 1, let me get my adapter cable here that I made, RJ-45 on one side and a 8-pin round on the other. So when you plug in the RJ-45, that's actually another thing with these RigBlasters too, is RJ-45 is 1 through 8, matches up exactly with 1 through 8 on the 8-pin connectors as well. And that lines up, of course, with the 1 through 8 that's listed on the circuit board down there. So pin 1 on this style 8-pin round for the Kenwood radios, pin 1 is the audio signal for the microphone. So that's what we want to attach the Bluetooth line to, which is what we have here. And then we have PTT connected just on the back side. So everything on the back is for the RJ-45. The connections on the front are for the round 8-pin, which we're not using in this case. So I'll detail the exact pinning here a little bit closer. We'll take a look at that next. So I'm hoping this shows up on the camera okay, but if it doesn't, then I can take this diagram and blow it up on the end of the video just as a still image, so you can see it a little bit closer up. If you see here, I have the pinning of the pin block on the circuit board drawn on the diagram. So this is what I'm referring to here. But this is going to be our base of pretty much everything that we're doing. But there's a couple things I want to point out right off the bat. Is there's two sides of this pin block. You've got an output and an input, but even more specific, because you have two different style connectors on this device. You've got a round 8-pin on one side, and you have the modular 8-pin on the other. So if you're familiar, again, with RigBlasters from years past or what have you, you can hook these up any way you want, whether you have an RJ-45 modular style connector on your radio. If that's the case, then you would connect this up like this. So that would be your input, and this side would be your output. But that's not how I'm using this at the moment. I'm using the round 8-pin style connector. So the way that we have the cable configured on my install here is with the round 8-pin as the output. So that would line up with the pin block and the pinning exactly as you see it here, that the right side is in fact the output. But since that's not always the case, I'm going to go ahead and add, on my diagram here, I'm going to add a descriptor here and say that the right side for the 1 through 8 pertains to the modular plug, and the 1 through 8 on the left side pertains to the round metal 8-pin connector on the left side of the circuit board, because you can interchange those. And another thing while I'm thinking about it is one nice thing that Westmont Radio has done in more recent times is they've come up with these ISC blocks, they call them. So if you're familiar with these in years past, you use these jumpers, but Westmont Radio's come up with these little circuit plugs that you can use that just drop in, and they configure your input and output automatically for whatever type of radio you want to use it with. You always do want to note too that on each one of these there's an arrow that points to the front. That's the side with the round 8-pin connector, so that's how you install those. But going back to the point of the video, trying to get the Bluetooth audio through a headset to run with PTT control, we have to modify things a little bit, so you cannot use these ISC plugs. You have to go to the old-fashioned jumpers. So speaking of that, let's take a look at the Kenwood style pinning. Let's detail that a little bit further here. So on pin 1 we have our mic signal. Pin 2 we have our PTT signal. Pin 3 is down. Pin 4 is up. Pin 5 is 8-volt supply. Pin 6 is not used. Pin 7 is the mic ground. And pin 8 is the PTT ground. So for the purpose of the headset, the only two things that you need to connect in this circuit are the microphone audio and the PTT signal and ground. So that's what we're going to take a look at. So if we detail this a little bit further, get my other diagram out here so I can follow along in the background. So we know that this wire is our Bluetooth audio. So this is what we want to connect to the microphone audio output going to the radio. So as we see here on our diagram, that's pin number 1. So we're going to mark this here as Bluetooth auxiliary. So now on pin 2, we have our PTT signal. So here's our pin 2, and we need to connect that over to the PTT on the circuit board. So we're going to connect these two guys together like that. Pin 3 is not used. Don't need to worry about that. Pin 4 is not used. Pin 5 is not used. Pin 6 is not used. And then now we have our ground connections that we need to make. So on 7, we have the microphone ground. So if we find, again, on our output list here for the RigBlaster, we find our microphone ground. That's down here. We're going to loop this over to pin number 7. And then 8 is the ground for the PTT. So there's our PTT ground. So we're going to loop this guy up and over just like that. And that's going to be everything to get the headset to run plus the PTT into the radio. So let's go ahead and do that here. And if you notice too, I'm bypassing these little blue jumpers. If you saw in the beginning of the video, I was putting those in. You really don't have to in this circuit. Again, it's just those 4 connections that we need to make. So here's our auxiliary Bluetooth. Plug that into pin 1. And then we've got pin 2. That's going to be our PTT signal. We'll find PTT signal. And the next one is going to be pin 7. And that's our microphone ground. There it goes. And there's our microphone ground. And then we've got pin 8, and that is PTT ground. There, that's what it should look like. And again, we're not using this 8-pin connector on the front because we're just using the headset with the PTT control through the RCA connector, which is in turn through these jumpers connected to the modular RJ-45 output. So now when we connect this up to the radio, we have our microphone audio and our PTT control through the RCA connector. So I would imagine that a lot of you want to run this RigBlaster Blue in a mobile environment with a headset so that you can talk on the road. And one of the things about the VOX circuit when you're in a mobile environment is if you have loud road noise or hit a pothole, someone honks their horn next to you, or you get mad at somebody cutting you off and you cuss at them, all of that goes right through the radio because your VOX kicks in. So that's one of the prime reasons for doing this PTT modification, is that it gives you that control over when the radio transmits, when you want it to and not when you don't. So let's take a look at mobile install with the Kenwood TM-V71. The other thing that you'll notice about a lot of mobile radios, and even some of the multi-mode radios, you have remote control microphones. So not only do you want to have your PTT control of your audio, but you probably want to have all the functions on your remote. So I'll show you guys how to hook that up here also. So let's take a look now at the pinning for the modular style Kenwood connector. And again, I've drawn our pin block here on the right side, same as it was for the round, because it is the same on the circuit board anyway. But it's the pinning and how we connect it up that changes now. So let's look at pin 1. That's on the modular style connectors, that's not used. Pin 2 is 8-volt supply. Pin 3 is ground. That's PTT. Also power. We'll get back to that here in a minute. Pin 4 is PTT signal. Pin 5 is the mic ground. Pin 6 is mic signal. Pin 7 is not used. And pin 8 is the keypad serial connection. So that's our connection for the communication. So when you push the function buttons and the number buttons on the keypad, that's what controls the radio. So that's one of our prime connections we need to make. So now let's look at the layout of this one more time. So since the input and output of the radio, I'm sorry, the microphone connection on the radio is the RJ-45, then we need the input and output of the RigBlaster to match that. So in this case, we're going to use the round 8-pin connector as the output, not the input. So this is where we flip sides between the input and output in the pin block. So again, pin 1 is not used. Pin 2 is our 8-volt supply. That's going to be on our round connector. So that's over here. And that is going to be a jumper straight across to pin 2, because there's no connection back to the RigBlaster with that particular part of the circuit. So the ground for the PTT, that's on pin 3. And actually, we're going to come back to this in a minute. But there is a jumper across there. But again, we'll get back to that because it's a little bit more in depth than just that. Pin 4 is PTT signal. So that's going to go to the output side PTT signal. So this is going to cross over like that. Pin 5 is the microphone ground. So that's going to go, whoops, I'm sorry, I did this backwards. The nice thing about pencil, you can erase it. So pin 4 goes to PTT, and then pin 5 is going to go to the mic ground, which is down here. Then pin 6 is our microphone signal, and that is the Bluetooth auxiliary, so we'll mark that here. Pin 7, not connected, and then pin 8, that's our serial connection. So that has a jumper straight across as well. So let's go ahead and take a look at the circuit board now, and we'll dial in a little bit more on that, that pin 3. I'll grab my microphone too, so I have a conversation piece as we go along. So if we're wanting to power this microphone, we need that 8-volt supply, and we need that ground connection. But the ground connection also needs to connect to the radio, which is what's going to go out this round connector. But now the same ground that goes between these plugs is also the same one that we use for the PTT. So now we have 3 connections that need to be connected with that same pin 3. So what I did is, let me hold this up a little closer. This is just a lead off of a resistor or diode or something like that, but I bent it a little bit with a loop and then a hook on the other side. So this way I can jump pins 3 together down here. Get this pushed into place. Trying to make sure that that's got a little bit tighter grip on those pins. And all that does is it goes in place of one of these blue jumpers. But that's so that we can attach our PTT ground with one of these guys. So let me figure out what pin that was again. So PTT ground is on pin 3. And let's see, I guess it doesn't matter which side of that because it's connected together now. PTT ground, and we want the output, which is that side. So now we've got that connected. So we'll move on to pin 2. Actually, I'm going to take these cables off so I can see this a little bit better. There. Now it's oriented correctly and I can see it. Let's see, 8-volt supply on pin 2. Let's see, actually that's going to go straight across, isn't it? It is. So 2 and 3, we're going to put these jumpers in place. Actually, 3's already got that wire tie, so we're good with that one. And let's see, pin 8. I'll just go ahead and put that in now. That needs a jumper as well. So now we have our PTT signal. That's going to be on pin 4. That's going to be on the round side, so that's the left. And that's going to go to the output, which is the right side. There's our PTT signal. And we've got the ground for the mic. That's on pin 5. So it's going to be the round pin 5 side, and that's going to cross over to the output microphone ground, which is right there. And then our microphone signal, which is again the auxiliary Bluetooth, that goes to pin 6. And that's on the round side. So let me hold this up a little closer so you can see it, maybe. And again, there's that resistor or diode lead that's shorting out both sides of pin 3. And then the other jumper's in place. And again, this is what's important about the ability to cross these over, because you can flip these round and modular connectors on the circuit board itself, depending on, again, what type of radio that you have. So now we've got it pinned correctly. Let's go ahead and power it up.
So now I'm talking to you again on the Bluetooth headset, this time going through the TM-V71, and we do have it set to PTT at the moment. So we're using our little switch down here. But I'll go ahead and kick that off and we'll switch it to VOX. Now we're on VOX operation. As you can see, it works just the same as it did on the other radio. And we'll go ahead and switch it back to PTT. So now there's PTT on. And just to prove the point that the microphone remote still functions, we can go ahead and toggle that here. Actually, we can't do it when we're transmitting, so let me turn this off here. So as you can see, direct keypad entry, it works fine. Changing the display left to right, VFO to memory mode, you can change everything just fine with the remote on the microphone, even though you're using the audio in and out on the headset through the Bluetooth. So that's it.
So one last comment before I wrap up this video is, due to the way that I'm pinning the RigBlaster to get the PTT operation with the Bluetooth, one of the things that we are giving up is the ability to use the audio from a microphone plugged into the RigBlaster. Now, I know that's one of the big benefits of using a RigBlaster in the first place, is that you do have all those different audio source options, but because the RigBlaster didn't come from the factory with the PTT ability, we are bypassing the system a little bit, and that in turn is one of the things that you have to give up, is the ability to use the microphone audio. So if you really wanted to get in depth with it, I'm sure there is a way that you can do it external to the RigBlaster using relays, switches, and auxiliary circuitry, but that's beyond the scope of what I wanted to cover in this video. So with that having been said, this is episode number 7 of QRP to QRO. My name is Steve, and my amateur radio call sign is KCQVO. As always, if you like what you've seen in my videos, or they help you in your own amateur radio endeavors, please click on the subscribe button underneath the bottom right of the screen. That way you'll get an email notification the next time I post a video. You can also follow me on Twitter at QRP to QRO. Thanks for watching.